Here at the Seattle Atheist Church, the members ourselves give many of the talks. We have a planning meeting every quarter that's open to the whole community, where we consider suggestions for talks that members of our community would like to give. For today, please join me in welcoming Ryan to give a talk about why we sleep, unlocking the power of sleep and dreams. Ryan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Stephen. I went ahead and before the chat got disabled, posted a few links. So today I'll be covering Why We Sleep. I know it's backwards, but it's by Matthew Walker. It's Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. And he actually has a few TED Talks. That's what I posted in the chat. So if you want to hear it from the author's mouth, you can go there. But I'll be going into a little bit different detail as I read the book. And if you're curious, camera on this laptop is in the bottom left, so it makes me look really spacey. Just keep that in mind because I'll be reading my notes behind the screen. You can see my hand, it's really annoying. You should really get a web camera. And here we go. So sleep being incredibly undervalued in our culture. We spend a third of our lives sleeping and we really don't value it as much as we should. It's possibly due to our lack of understanding of how important it is. But with a lot of research, we can kind of piece that together and maybe bring that back into our culture as something we really should be prioritizing. So at the end of this, I'll be giving you 12 tips on how to get better sleep and hopefully convince you of the importance of sleep. So some of the benefits of sleep are you will live longer. It enhances your memory, makes you more creative, makes you look more attractive, keeps you slimmer, protects you from dementia and cancer, cold and flu, lowers the risk of heart attacks, stroke, diabetes, and you will feel happier and less depressed and less anxious. Why would anybody not be getting the full amount of sleep if they can? It sounds pretty great. So why do we not? Because we don't value it. I'm going to go ahead and talk about various aspects of sleep the author is outlined in brief. It's really interesting to note that our 24-hour circadian rhythm is not actually based on the sun. It's a helpful reminder and absolutely influences it. But interestingly enough, if you take people and set them into a cave and completely shut them off from sunlight, they actually will establish their own circadian rhythms depending on their personal biology. So in this experiment, I had two people and one had a 26-hour rhythm and the other had a 28-hour rhythm. It's just really interesting. So obviously it does get tied to the sun and the sunlight, and it's actually really healthy to do so. So keep that in mind. So as you know, we have night owls, people who like to stay up later and people who like to stay up less late, like to get up earlier in the morning. They call them morning larks. And this is actually due to your biology. People will naturally be inclined to stay up later and stay up less late. And there's actually an evolutionary aspect to this. We actually, when we're hunter-gatherers, used to, have people keep watch because there's stuff out there that might want to eat you. And this is the theory anyway, is that some people go to bed earlier, some people go to bed later, and then they would kind of shift off. When morning would come around, people would wake up and be able to keep watch. So that just means, what does that mean for modern day? We naturally sleep at different periods, so we should naturally have flexible work schedules, if possible, of course, depending on your industry, so that you can really be at your most efficient, which works best for you. And how sleep works is it's all chemically based. So melatonin, you might have heard, is a chemical that's responsible for kind of helping you fall asleep. So there's a rising sleep pressure that builds at a natural rhythm throughout the day, and it really helps if you stay on a sleep schedule so that you don't miss this. So it makes it easier to fall asleep. And this is before really even understanding most of the benefits of sleeping, but incredibly important to kind of stay in rhythm so that you can not miss it. Because if you stay up past that melatonin peak, it can be harder to fall asleep later. And then you're going to wake up in the morning anyway with much less sleep. So kind of in theme with people having different sleep cycles, being morning larks and night owls, it actually works differently for different ages as well. So obviously babies sleep a lot more than adults, and teenagers actually sleep a bit more as well. They actually need more sleep, and they naturally tend up to stay up later, which is obviously bad because parents are always trying to get them to go to bed earlier when they're naturally inclined to want to stay up later, and they need more sleep. And school tends to start at 7 in the morning, which is, as the book goes into, really bad, essentially, because as you'll find out, sleep is really good for learning and memory retention, which you don't get if you stay up late, wake up early, especially when the buses get there at 5 in the morning and you got to get to school by 7. So really, it's putting everybody at a disadvantage, including office workers, including everybody else who has to get up early, people who work overnight. It's also really bad for them as well. It's a lot harder to establish those cycles. So just keep in mind that different ages will have different, optimal sleep cycles. And this is actually different for older people as well. As you age, you get reduced quality of sleep, reduced quantity of sleep. The efficiency of your sleep is reduced as well, which means how often you wake up in the middle of the night and then go back to sleep. And the timing of when you sleep can be disrupted as well. So something is that there's a common myth is that people who are older don't need as much sleep, or actually, well, anyone in any period needs less sleep. We all need, I think it's like 7 to 9 hours of sleep per day. And it's just the fact that you can't get sleep doesn't mean that you don't need it still. So he did some experiments on basically students, for example, as one of them, just looking at memory retention and performance. And kind of the key findings of this is that you need sleep not only after learning so that you can retain it, you actually need sleep before learning as well. So at all points, sleep is helpful. So when you sleep well before, it preps your brain to be like a dry sponge, the author calls it, so that you can just absorb all of that information much easier. And then after you're done learning all that stuff, you need to sleep well so that your brain can hit the save button and then it commits it to long-term memory. So pulling an all-nighter is terrible because you're not going to retain much, and your performance the next day is going to be significantly reduced. So get sleep, pretty much prioritize that, and make sure that's part of your day, and including whatever work that you have as well, so that you can be a better performer at your job. You'll be able to problem solve better, et cetera, et cetera. But in addition to this cat's playing down there, in addition to memory and cognitive performance, it actually helps your motor performance as well. So if you're an athlete and any sport, if you train hard and then rob yourself of sleep, as they used to do, think like a football boot camp, and you're out there training hard every day and they wake you up early, 5 in the morning, they should really be having everyone sleep in, because you don't see the benefits, because all that physical exercise and routine and motion is being captured in your brain when you sleep. It's how your brain actually processes everything and makes you improve much better. So he does studies upon studies in this book where he describes, he gets, people in a room, 10 people are allowed to sleep soundly all night. And then 10 people are like allowed 4 hours of sleep, and then they give them math problems, and it's pretty stark. You get 40% reduced ability in doing any sort of problem, and that can translate from getting an A to getting an F or a D or anything like that. So really important to be getting sleep for pretty much every aspect of your life. So really interestingly, dreams, as you might be aware of, are according to the author, and his theory is that they actually help dreaming as therapy. So the idea being that your dreams actually help remove emotions from useful experiences. So he gives an example of maybe when you're a kid, you were almost hit by a car, and then you were super scared and really heightened and as a really terrible experience. But then maybe later you'll naturally kind of cleanse out of the emotions. Not saying that the emotions are bad in this case, but that when you're thinking about it later, you don't want to suddenly just be super intensely afraid, but you can go back and remember, hey, that was really scary. Hey, I should look both ways before crossing the street, or whatever it happens to be. So it allows you to kind of, he describes it as a melon, like extracting the fruit from the bitter melon, meaning the bitter emotions that come with it. It's pretty interesting. I never really thought about dreaming as a way of helping you kind of move past things. And then he talks about how, the chemical aspects of it kind of bathes your brain in these like, rejuvenating chemicals that you really want to get your brain all of that action through sleep. So there's another way it kind of helps you. So let's see, goes on to talk about other things like sleep disorders and whatnot. And he also talks about how sleeping pills are not actually as great as you might think. So you might think, oh, I'll just sleep better, I'll take a pill. But the problem with that is, obviously I'm not a doctor, and I'm sure there's some cases where it's useful, but it doesn't produce the same type of sleep. And so there's different types of sleep. There's REM sleep and like more wakeful sleep. I'm not going to go into the details, but it kind of doesn't produce the same results. And so he actually recommends, obviously, if you have something more serious medical, to go see a doctor for that. But for more generally, cognitive behavioral therapy for getting those sorts of things taken care of kind of naturally. So that's part of the 12 tips that I'll be giving you in just a minute here, is really just helping you have good sleep as you go. So by let's say avoiding, sticking to a sleep schedule, for example, as opposed to going to bed at like 10 or then 2 the next day and then 3 the next day, really throws your body off. So another example of how sleep is good for you is that, for example, employees, they perform worse whenever they're underslept across all categories. Thinking about performance, creativity, efficiency, how long they take things to get things done. And so a shrewd capitalist might be like, well, we want to get our employees well rested so they can perform better. But it's a win-win because people are happier and they can actually get their work done faster, which, depending on your job, if you're not hourly, you can again go ahead and get other things done as well. So it's better for work-life balance. So some things that you can do to kind of focus on getting better sleep is lighting. So as you might have heard, blue light inhibits sleep, and it's the type of light that you'll experience in natural sunlight. But since we live in the modern age and we don't go to bed when the sun goes down and wake up when it comes up, we get exposed to blue light at all times. We all have phones, TVs, laptops, iPads, et cetera, and all of this inhibits the production of melatonin, which helps you fall asleep. And so you get less sleep and your sleep is not as good. So we want to consider getting better light bulbs and they're coming out with ones apparently soon-ish, according to the author, that will be adaptable. So they might just have, brighter during the day, and they might start dimming over time at night. And this is something that you can install in your home, or hopefully businesses might consider doing that in the office, as well as in cars. Maybe it'll be really bright in the morning. We need to be alert, and so you avoid getting into a car accident. Actually, I'm not sure when it wouldn't just be bright in your car. But something you can consider doing to help there. And so he talks about, transforming everything, talking about the individual choices, making yourself sleep better, teaching that sleep is super important, making businesses prioritize sleep and that you can get that. So for example, doctors, whenever you're doing your like postdocs and all that, and your, there's a term for when they're learning and on the job. I forget what it is for some reason, but they are basically sleep deprived.
Residency.
It's like a rite of passage. And so that's terrible because they're going to perform worse and they're going to learn less and they're going to be miserable overall. Same thing for regular doctors, actually. They'll make worse decisions on less sleep. And that'll actually apply to anything, judges around lunchtime. There's a natural circadian rhythm where maybe you would want to take a nap in mid-afternoon. But when you're making, they've shown and through statistics and studies that they'll make worse rulings whenever you're hungry or you're tired or you're sleepy. So we should really be considering this in both our public policy and society in general, just kind of prioritizing sleep. So I want to cover 12 different tips for sleeping better. Number one that's worked for me actually, sticking to a sleep schedule. Really important. I was definitely not on board with this idea. I was definitely rebelling against it when I first heard it, but it actually does work. It really helps normalize your sleep schedule and the chemicals that get produced that help you fall asleep. So I don't have a hard time falling asleep anymore because I'm not going to bed at 2 and 10 and 12 and kind of throwing my body off. So again, start sticking to a sleep schedule, and this includes weekends. That was a huge problem for me. I would wake up, I would go to bed super late on the weekends, and then that would just throw everything off. If you can just pick a time and stick to it, that's reasonable, obviously, for your own body, then you will experience the benefits of that, which includes waking up naturally at the time that you should. So you don't necessarily need the alarm as much as you might need. And something to keep in mind, you don't want to hit the snooze button. It's not good for you. He mentions talking about how, especially if your alarm is really jarring and just kind of that blaring, screeching sound, it'll wake you up, but it'll actually, over time, hurt your heart. Your heart will get a little scared, and that's fine, once or twice. But over every year, 20 years of constantly having your heart jarred, it's not good for your health. So consider getting a gradual alarm that will just kind of, start at the very lowest volume and then slowly increase, and maybe make the alarm some sort of nice music or something, which you can do on apps on the phone and whatnot. So that leads me to number 2, tips for sleeping better. Don't exercise too close to bedtime. Exercise is great for helping you sleep, but you don't want to do it within 2 to 3 hours of when you're supposed to go to bed. If your bedtime's at 10, you should generally not do a super late workout. You should get that done maybe before 7, so that you have time to let your body wind down. Let's see, number 3, avoid caffeine and nicotine. So obviously we all love coffee, but you should really be drinking your coffee in the morning. And that's because it's a drug and it'll actually inhibit the same receptors that the melatonin is supposed to go into. And so you might think, oh, I'm having coffee at 4, I'll have plenty of time to get out of me. But actually it has a half-life in your body. So your liver will scrub it out of your system, but it's slow. So you might still have a ton of caffeine in you if you had a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. and that actually prevent you from falling asleep, which is overall going to be bad for you. So definitely keep an eye on when you're drinking coffee and how much, so that you can still enjoy that in the morning. Number 4, avoid alcohol. So for the similar reason, alcohol inhibits your sleep. Funny enough, the author recommends drinking in the morning for the best sleep benefits, which of course no one will ever do. You're going to find yourself drinking at night, but notice that when you drink a lot, you're probably not going to get the same quality of sleep. You might be able to fall asleep just fine, but as with the sleeping pills, it doesn't produce the same quality of sleep, because when you're sleeping, you need that deeper REM sleep to occur, and you don't get as much of that when you're drinking late at night. So if you want good sleep, don't drink late to the best of your ability. Number 5, avoid large meals late at night. So if you've ever not eaten dinner and then you ate really late because you're super hungry, ate a lot, maybe 10, I've done this, you just don't sleep well. Your body's too busy processing that. You're going to overheat, at least in my case, because your body's busy burning that off or whatever it does. And that just leads to bad sleep. You're going to wake up feeling not as well as you would otherwise. Number 6 out of 12, we have avoid sleep inhibiting medications if possible. So obviously optional medications only apply here, but if you have anything that you're taking that might inhibit sleep as part of the side effects, try to avoid those if you can. Obviously, this is going to be very personal depending on what you need, but just keep that in mind anyway. Number 7, don't take naps after 3 p.m. So naps are great. He encourages them when you're tired, but if you sleep past 3, roughly depending on when you go to bed, you're going to start to interfere with this cycle that leads up to your normal bedtime. So maybe you might take a mid-afternoon nap at like 1:30 or 2, and that's great. But then if you do that at 5 p.m., you're going to kind of run into your normal bedtime and maybe interrupt that, which can be bad. So number 8, relax before bed. You can't just go straight from exercising, binge watching your favorite show, and then just go straight to bed. You're gonna be a little wired. You're gonna be hyped up. You really need to build in some sort of ritual of giving yourself time to relax and not exposing yourself to blue light, which can come from all the different devices that you're. To be honest, we're all doing. It definitely can prevent you from sleeping well. So number 9. Take a hot bath before bed. This is something that obviously not everyone's going to be able to do, especially not every night, but essentially what it'll do is it'll actually lower your core temperature, which is important for sleeping because we actually sleep at a lower temperature. We actually need the bedroom to be at a lower temperature when we're sleeping. We'll actually sleep better when that's the case. Which leads us to number 10, which includes having a cool bedroom. Having a dark bedroom, not lots of bright lights, minimizing any sort of annoying, anything flashing, anything like that. Keep it darker, keep the bedroom cool. So if your thermostat is at a normal, comfortable temperature during the day, you might consider making it a little lower when you're sleeping. And this will actually give you better sleep. And then of course, do not bring any wakeful activities into the bed. I'm talking about phones, laptops, iPads, anything like that, because what you'll do is you'll associate the bed with wakefulness instead of associating it with sleep, which is really what you should trigger when you go to bed. So if you take all of that and maybe do it in the living room or whatever, then you go to bed and then, your body goes, oh, it's sleep time, and then it'll just do its thing. So definitely try to keep that out. I know that can be difficult to scroll the phone right before bed, but it's actually going to inhibit your sleep or prevent you from falling asleep as well. So number 11 is the next tip. Get natural light exposure during the day. So definitely in Seattle, it's difficult. You go to work, depending on your job, and then you just stay indoors. The daylight's less, so you don't even see the light of day the entire day. That's bad because your body uses light as a way to tie itself to its natural rhythm. And so you actually want to get that exposure. It could be late morning, midday, and then your body will go, oh, okay, it's midday. I should start the melatonin buildup cycle a bit later, and then you'll have that natural buildup, and then you'll be able to sleep well later that day. So it's good for multiple reasons. Obviously not too much, and then wear sunscreen, all that if you're going to be out there for too long. Let's see. And the last one, if you do find yourself in a bed awake and you can't fall asleep, then go do something else for a while. It's not good for you to just stay in bed because you're going to build anxiety around, oh, shoot, I can't fall asleep, or you're stressed about something, or you're worried about something. If that's the case, get up, go do something. If it takes more than 20 minutes to try and fall asleep, because you're really just going to be digging a deeper hole for yourself. It's not going to be easy to fall asleep. You're just going to stay in bed awake for hours. You're better off going and doing something else for a little while and then trying again later. So that is the last piece of advice. Hopefully I've made you a bit more aware of just how important sleep is for both your well-being, for society. You're going to get less car accidents if you sleep well. You're going to learn better. You're going to be kinder. There's a million reasons to sleeping well and making it a priority, whereas at least for me, when I was growing up, it was not made aware to me, and I never considered sleep as more important than other things. So it's really important that the new research be out there and we are aware of it. So that's my talk, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Can everyone unmute themselves and give a round of applause?